"Excuse me, ma'am. I don't see your name on the guest list." Dr. Alana Montgomery paused, her breath catching at the hostess's words. The din of clinking glassware and hushed laughter wrapped around her like a barrier. It wasn't just her name missing. It was her presence, her place. She steadied herself. "My husband, Jordan Matthews, reserved table 3, she said, voice calm yet assertive. The hostess, a young woman named Chloe, gave a rehearsed smile that didn't quite meet her eyes. "I'm sorry, that table is already taken." Alana didn't need to ask by whom. She already knew. Chloe turned her attention away, welcoming a woman in an emerald silk dress with warmth that Alana hadn't been afforded. "Table 3 is ready for Ms. Sterling," she said, voice now bright, but Alana's lips pressed into a thin line. "That is my husband's table, reserved in my name." Moments later, the manager appeared, Mr. Harrison, slick, polished, and equally dismissive. "We can offer you a quieter spot," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the kitchen. Alana met his gaze. "You're offering me a seat by the kitchen while someone else sits at the table reserved for me?" Mr. Harrison didn't flinch. "We do our best to accommodate our guests." A familiar ache settled in Alana's chest. The same ache she felt in every boardroom where she had to prove her worth. Every classroom where she was questioned. Every silent moment of erasure. Then came the sound. A soft but unmistakable hum of an electric engine outside that a sleek, limited edition Tesla rolled to a stop. Jordan Matthews emerged, tall, composed, with the unspoken gravity of someone who knew his power. He moved like a storm held tightly in check. He walked into the restaurant and spotted Alana near the entrance. "You've been waiting this whole time?" She nodded. Around them, the room grew still. He turned to Mr. Harrison. "You gave away my wife's table?" The manager blanched. There must have been a misunderstanding. Jordan's voice remained level. "You didn't know she was my wife? Or you decided she didn't belong?" The implication landed like a crack of thunder. From table 3, Veronica Sterling gave a sharp laugh. "This is getting dramatic." Jordan turned to the crowd. "My wife is Dr. Alana Montgomery, a tenured professor, a published scholar. You erased her name because she didn't fit your idea of who belongs here." Phones began to glow as guests recorded the scene. Conversations halted. Whispers replaced idle chatter. Mr. Harrison stumbled over an apology, but it was too late. Alana stepped forward. "After denying my reservation, offering me a seat by the kitchen, and allowing me to be mocked, you think the solution is to pretend nothing happened?" A security guard shifted uneasily. No one moved to escort her out. Jordan's voice sliced through the tension. "When discrimination becomes policy, this place ceases to have value." That night, in a boardroom lined with glass and leather, Jordan sat at the head of a long table. Around him were the faces of the grand house's leadership. 12 instances in 6 months, he began, where tables were reassigned to favor white guests over black patrons and other minorities. He displayed logs, receipts, even staff emails. "This isn't a mistake. It's a system." Mr. Harrison fumbled for defense. "VIPs, late changes," Jordan cut him off. "You fostered a culture where exclusion is dressed in professionalism. That ends tonight." The vote for termination was unanimous, but the story traveled further. Overnight, headlines lit up, prestigious restaurant accused of racial bias. Alana's quiet dignity became a symbol. Her blog post, titled "The Table They Tried to Erase," went viral. When you're erased from places you helped build, you learn silence is never neutral. Jordan became more than a silent investor. He introduced sweeping reforms, AI-driven equity monitors, anonymous bias reporting, and transparency protocols. Staff meetings turned into open forums. A new culture began to take root. Marcus, a young black server once disciplined for complaining, was promoted to head of guest experience. His first act? Establishing a guest equity review committee. Even Veronica Sterling issued a public apology, donating to an inclusion initiative. Not out of guilt, but necessity, the Grand House became a place reborn. No longer an echo chamber for the privileged, but a litmus test for change. And yet, As Alana stood at the threshold of her next fight, she knew this moment was just the beginning. Jordan's reply was unyielding. This isn't about dragging names. It's about revealing truth. Those words didn't just echo inside the grand house. They traveled. A quiet wave surged through elite spaces once protected by unspoken hierarchies. Luxury spas implemented anti-bias training without fanfare. Boutique hotels rewrote check-in policies. Jazz lounges, once infamous for exclusivity cloaked in reservation issues, began issuing transparency reports. No hashtags, no marches, just one undeniable truth. The game had changed. Alana Montgomery hadn't intended to start a movement. But when your presence challenges a room's comfort, your resistance becomes revolution. Weeks passed, then months. The storm faded from headlines, but not from memory. Something had shifted. Alana, for the first time in a long while, allowed herself space. Not for retreat, but for reflection. Then one spring evening, she received an unexpected call. "Marcus, we've made some changes," he said. "There's something you should see." Alana returned to the grand house, not with defiance, but with quiet resolve. Dressed in charcoal slacks and a soft cream blouse, she was understated. Yet every eye turned. Not from scandal, but reverence. Marcus met her at the door, no longer in uniform. A tailored suit, confidence radiating from him. "This way, Dr. Montgomery." She followed him to table 3. It was the same. And yet not. The crisp white linen. The softly lit centerpiece. The subtle hum of conversation. But what caught her eye wasn't the table. It was the wall behind it. Where once hung abstract art, now stood a black and white portrait. A candid photo of her from that night. Composed, standing tall, her eyes unflinching. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Table 3. Where elegance redefined the rules." She froze. Not from pride, but from the weight of what had been overcome. Jordan arrived minutes later, quietly stepping beside her. He didn't speak right away, just took her hand, their fingers interlocking with ease. They Saturday for the first time. Alana dined at table 3, not as an accessory, not as an exception, but as the reason change had become necessary. Over candlelight and soft music, Jordan poured her a glass of wine. "You led the way," he said, eyes sincere. Alana gave a faint smile, the kind born of hard-won truths. "I didn't need to win," she said softly. "I just needed them to admit they were wrong." Jordan raised his glass. To the woman who wouldn't be erased. As the night deepened, a subtle current moved through the restaurant. Guests, some new, some who remembered, stole glances not out of curiosity, but out of admiration. The air felt different, less guarded, more honest. This was no longer about one table. It was about the power of presence. Later, as the restaurant emptied and the last plate was cleared, Alana lingered. Her eyes landed on the framed reservation slip mounted discreetly near the entrance. Her name printed clearly, the date etched below it, silent proof that she had always belonged. Outside, city lights shimmered, but something else moved beneath the surface. Conversations, invitations, doors that once closed now opened with care. Spaces that had excluded were being reimagined, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. This wasn't performative change. It was structural. In Washington, D.C., a law professor cited the table they tried to erase in a lecture about systemic bias in public spaces. In a Chicago cafe, a black teenage girl started a blog called "My Seat, My Story." In San Francisco, a jazz club renamed its stage after Marcus, honoring his courage to speak when silence was easier. Alana's story had become a blueprint, not for perfection, but for accountability. And yet, she knew this wasn't a final chapter. It never is. Change doesn't announce itself in fireworks. It's not always loud. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in an unreturned glance, in a misplaced name, in a seat offered by the kitchen, or in a table once stolen, and now reclaimed. As Alana stepped outside, the cool night air kissed her skin. Jordan wrapped a hand around her shoulder. "You feel that?" he asked. She nodded. "The air's lighter." "No," he said, smiling. That's history making room for what's next. She laughed, a soft, full sound that turned heads without meaning to. And in that moment, she understood, dignity doesn't beg to be seen. It commands recognition simply by showing up, again and again, refusing to vanish. Behind her, the grand house glowed warm and golden. But its most powerful light came from something new, a legacy carved not in glass and gold, but in truth, courage, and the unwavering power of taking your place. Because sometimes the fiercest revolution begins not with fire, but with the simple act of sitting down and refusing to get up.